You're listening to the Mind Podcast.
Today's guest shares his first experiences with mental health and how it's morphed his life into what it is today. Okay, there we go. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello, my name is Tyler. You may know me from MTV. Occasionally I'm on there. I've been on there for 10 years. So, I'm just, yeah, occasionally, sometimes. New season premieres the 20th or 21st, so, which is tomorrow.
I was going to say, isn't that tomorrow?
Yeah, the new season. So here we go.
Right? That's exciting.
Yeah.
So what's your experience been with mental health? I mean, I know you've shared your story, but never really personally, particularly with you.
I mean, my mental health journey's been, I probably started when I was a young kid. My dad kind of going in and out of prison my whole life and being addicted to drugs kind of made, growing up a little tough. So I actually, the first time I remember going to therapy, I was around the age of 11.
Oh, wow,
Was my
that's
very
young.
first, it was my very first experience with a therapist. So that was after a suicide attempt that happened when I was really that age. And my mom kind of is the one that, was like, we need to do something, obviously. So my first experience actually was going to a therapist, but it was our insurance could only afford a specific therapist. So I had to go to a actual psych hospital place
Okay.
in a different department wing of that hospital. But I remember being very young and walking past severely mentally ill people in paper dresses and someone wheelchair. It was very as a kid, you're 11, you're like walking past people that are severely mental ill, and it's scary as a kid when they're screaming and yelling and the whole environment. So my first experience with that was kind of like a little intense at the age of 11, but yeah, after that, I actually was prescribed antidepressants at that age. So
Wow, that's really
yeah,
young.
and I don't know if that was the lack of it was a government funded therapist. So I don't know if that had anything. I don't know if that has anything to do with the treatment that I got. But I remember taking the antidepressants for probably from the age of 11 and 12 to probably 13 or 14, and that's when I was like, I just knew it
No
was.
more.
Yeah, I just felt as a kid like I was always really hyper and kind of obnoxious, and so
Mm-hmm.
I noticed that I was just, instead of feeling hyper and obnoxious, I kind of just felt like nothing. So I had no elevation of emotion, nowhere. It was actually the only couple of years I did good in school behavior wise, but
Huh.
that was kind of the only benefit of it. But as far as emotion wise, I just kind of felt really numb. So I stopped taking them around the age of 14. That's when I met Kate, and I haven't been on any kind of antidepressant since then. But I've continuously done talk therapy, kind of going through my life, and I'm pretty sure people have seen on the show if they know who I am, and that whole kind of thing. So I've had a long journey with mental health. I feel like with my wife going through her thing,
Right.
her postpartum, her suicidal ideation, and that kind of stuff. So it's just been a it's been a whirlwind of mental health stuff. It's crazy.
Yeah. And I mean, you have your own, but you have so many people surrounding you who have also had mental health issues, substance abuse issues. And do you feel like all that contributes to your own mental health?
I would probably be lying if I said it didn't. It definitely does. I feel like specifically with my wife, it was I had to kind of fulfill a caretaking role, and I had no idea that there was even such thing as caretaking fatigue, or I don't know exactly what they label it as, but
Compassion fatigue.
yeah. And so I went to therapy after realizing that I kind of felt super depleted after really focusing on making sure she was okay, and she went to treatment a couple of times, so I was at home with the baby. So trying to just balance that out, I guess, was kind of difficult. And I had no idea that I was even, I didn't know that compassion fatigue was even a thing. So learning that was pretty interesting with my dad and stuff, his addiction issues and stuff like that. I feel like it just affected me in a way of I guess more or less addiction as a mental health issue. I used to just think, growing up, he was an idiot and just was like, I really relied on my anger part. I was like, oh, whatever, addiction and addicts and blah blah. But I think actually going through his treatment programs with him, it helped me kind of realize that addiction really was a brain issue. And
Yeah.
I didn't really look at it like that. I looked at it like a very selfish, just selfish choice you're making. And yeah, so that, I don't know, it helped. It helped actually kind of influence me though to kind of get my own work done. So I guess it was
Mm.
kind of a good thing, because seeing so many people suffer from all these different things, it was like I need to make sure I'm good too. So it kind of helped me push me to get my own help.
Right. I mean, that's kind of like a sweet little blessing in disguise right
Yeah, a little
there.
bit. Yeah, I try to put a positive spin on it if I can.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so far, I've had quite a few interviews with people, and I've noticed that most of them say, even though they wouldn't necessarily want to go through it again, they wouldn't
Right.
change any of it. So that's kind of a very interesting commonality between everyone I've spoken to so far. Um, but you said that you were 11 and you had attempted suicide. What brought you
Mhm.
to that point? Because that's so young.
Um, I think, well, let's think. Yeah, so I was 11. So, I always had a lot of like behavioral problems in school. Like I was always suspended
Mm.
and expelled, and we had to move once because I was kicked out of every school in that county.
Wow.
Um, so behavioral problems kind of I learned through my own therapy as an adult that other adults around me kind of help put this thing in my head that I'm a bad kid, I'm too hyper, um, kind of untamable,
Mm.
rebel, whatever you want to call it. And I kind of just I think that fueled my, you know, figure out who I was, whatever. So that kind of had a big thing to do with it. But I, at the age of 11, was when my dad got out of prison for the second time, and he was out for a while, and I thought everything was gonna go great because now I'm 11. So I didn't really. I had him when I was 8. I have a memory of him when I was probably like 3 or 4. He went into prison, got out when I was 8. He was around for like a year, and then went back. And the time that he went back when I was 8 was super intense because I actually stayed with him during a summer, and it was my first like memory. I could really remember
Yeah.
being with him because I was 8. The last time I was with him when I was 4. I don't really remember that too much about when I was 4, but this time was really intense because I stayed with him the whole summer and kind of saw how he lived, and he's addicted to crack cocaine, so that it was up all night. It was irritable during the day. It was chaotic with my uncle there, and there was just no stability. There was no like guidance. I did a lot of things in that summer. I smoked weed. I tried cigarettes. I got drunk off of half a can of beer. I mean, I was 8 years old. I look back at it now and I'm like, wow, this is crazy. But
Yeah.
um so that, and then actually that's when he got bounty hunters found him, my dad, and they attacked him in front of me when I was 8. And so of course, you go attack the police because you're like, get off my dad, what are you
Yeah.
doing, thinking the police are the bad guys. And watching him get taken away in the cop car, and I had to run, and I was chasing him. I'm 8, so I'm like, what are you doing? So I'm running after this cop car, and he's in the back seat. And then that's when he turns around and kind of looked at me, and I was really upset. And I talked to my mom, and that's when she kind of told me that like your dad suffers from this issue with crack cocaine. And so that kind of like pumped the brakes. And I was like, whoa, like, oh, okay. And that's when I started putting the thoughts in my head of, okay, crack, he loves crack more than his kids. And so
Mm.
I think that kind of like for the next 4 years, it just kept flooding and flooding. And then he gets out when I'm 11. So now I'm like, woohoo, finally. Okay, great. You're sober. Like naive 11-year-old brains thinking you're good. Like we're going to have
Yeah.
a family. We're going to be great. And then he went back to prison again because he violated from breaking in houses to support his habit. And I think at that point, it just all came. I mean, I built so much hope up. It just crashed it. It just crashed it all down. And I think at that point, I was like, well, I'm kicked out of school.
Hmm.
Teachers hate me. Principals hate me. I'm a nuisance. I can sense that, adults just, this kid's crazy and obnoxious and untamable, whatever. And I think that just all combined just hit me. And I went in the backyard and there was a tire swing back there, and I used a rope and I jumped off the tree. And I just remember, as being 11, I watched a lot of movies. So I'm thinking, okay, it's going to be really fast.
Right.
And it was not fast at all. It was slow. And so I was lucky enough to not be able to tie a rope good enough at 11. And I was able to free myself, because it wasn't fast. It was long. It was struggling. So once I freed myself, and that's kind of when I had to go to school with this big, rope burn on my neck. So I had to explain to my mom that I was playing in the backyard. I had to come up with all these different ideas and, reasons of why I had this huge, very obvious rope burn on my neck. And I think at that point, my mom knew something was wrong. So that's when I started going to therapy for the first time. But I think all that kind of stuff with my dad and leading up to the age of 11 is where I just felt like it was out. I had this idea in my brain. I know it may sound weird, but I did not expect to ever live past 15. I just knew there was something in my head where I was like, you're going to kill yourself. You're not before your 16th birthday. There's just no way that you're going to be able to live this long. So I think going to therapy after the age of 11 and realizing that, like, wow, maybe I will live till past the age of 15 was kind of a shocker for me. So like, it's weird to think about back then not really having a plan for my future, just because I had it in my head that I wasn't going to live this long. So it was a really intense experience, I guess, as a kid. And I didn't really realize how intense it was until going to therapy. And, I told my mom, don't freak out, don't worry too much about it. And she's over here like, oh my gosh, I have to freak out. I mean, are you serious? So, I mean, that's kind of at the age of 11 is where my real mental health journey, I feel like, started.
Right. Now, you never told your mom that you were actually attempting suicide, did you?
I didn't tell her till way later. She kept bugging me. And as the rope burn just got really bad, it was like, first day was kind of red and blotchy. The second day just, ugh. And then I felt like she kept asking me, like, why were you spinning so fast on the rope? There's no, like, she could tell that there was no way this thing was just an accident. And so I finally just told her, I said, well, I just wanted to die. And she was just, she broke down. And I almost was kind of angry with her. I remember being young and being like, Mom, stop, like, stop crying, like, chill out. Like, it's not that big of a deal, kind of thing. Because I didn't succeed. So just chill out. But she obviously freaked out and then got me into the therapy. But looking back at 29, it is really young. I mean, I look at 11-year-olds now and I'm just like, wow, like, I can't believe I had those kind of thoughts in my head at 11 is just kind of insane.
Right. I actually, at least from my own experience with my clients, I do see a lot of younger kids that you wouldn't really think would be having these thoughts. And I don't know what your take is on this, but I know that social media definitely impacts them quite a bit to have those thoughts of being unworthy, even though their immediate social circle might deem them worthy. The world doesn't. So
I think that's kind of the scary part about the kids growing up nowadays is we didn't when I was 11, there's no comparative thing. You couldn't compare your life and scroll and compare your life to this person or that person. And there was no, instant gratification of getting 20 likes, and then 50 likes or, so I couldn't imagine what it would have been like for me at that age. I actually feel really bad for the kids these days because of the fact that their whole life seems to be revolved around comparatives of other people's lives. And if it's not that good enough, or if this person portrays this thing on social media, like their life is so great, they compare it to their life and they're like, oh, mine's so crappy, and it's like, it's actually kind of sad. I think there's a lot more pressure for kids nowadays with the social media thing to be perfect, to not have any imperfections, to, post these amazing pictures all the time. It's constant. I mean, it's constant because you get reminded of it even after you leave school. And see, when I was younger, you know, when you were younger, it was like, you know, you go to school, it's like, that's the only comparatives you got. Then you left home with your friends, you kind of forgot about it. But nowadays they leave, you know, they leave school and they go right back into this kind of like, you know, just constant anxiety. I would feel like it would, that's what I would imagine it would be like if, you know,
Yeah.
Brian got 60 likes, I only got 15, and I'm, you know, I'm a piece of crap and I'm not good looking or whatever. So I actually feel really, it's horrible. Actually, it's really bad. That's why I feel like social media, that's the negative side of it. But I also feel like social media on the positive side, like what we're doing right now, using social media to talk and let these kids know that there are alternatives that you can do besides suicide. There's alternatives besides going and getting high. There's, you know, there, what is it? BetterHelp. You can go and literally message a therapist. Like, and if I had that when I was a kid, oh man, if I would have known about that, if kids were to know about that now, like I would think it would help a lot of people.
I completely agree. It's kind of incredible how readily available mental health help has come. But I think a lot of kids, they don't, not that they don't see a need in it, but maybe they don't feel like it would be helpful, or maybe even they don't want to be made fun of for it. You know, I don't want to go to therapy because it doesn't look good or whatever.
And that's kind of a weird concept if you think about it, because, you know, if you don't want to go to therapy because you don't want to look a certain way, that means you're attaching some kind of shame and guilt to it. And I feel like that's the main important thing that we need to use social media for now, is to just detach the shame and the guilt that you would feel seeking out help. It makes no sense that you're going to go and, you know, you want to get help with your diet. So you go to a dietitian, you know, or you have an issue with your, you know, your skin, you go to a dermatologist. Like, you have an issue with your brain, you have you have an emotional problem, you go to a therapist. Like, it should be that simple. But for some reason there's this guilt and shame attached to therapy, which just blows my mind, because I feel like if, you know, that would go away, we'd have a lot more happier people in the world.
Yeah. Just being satisfied with where you're at life, I think.
Yeah, really.
How was your experience with therapy when you were younger? I know did they put you on pills like right off the bat?
I actually went there for I think like 6 weeks. We went back once a week, kept going back, and then that's when they you know, they told my mom that, you know, we definitely think he's ADHD, and you know, he's definitely depressed, and yeah, I got put on after 6 weeks of seeing him, and it was on Zoloft. And I guess it was relatively new then. So they put me on that, and I took the pills and I stopped going to see the therapist, and that was kind of so that was kind of like my first experience of therapy. To me, it was kind of negative, only because it was like, wow, so you go talk to a guy for 6 weeks and then you just get put on this pill, and then magically, you know, your life is supposed to just be great. And I always tell people when they ask me, I'm always like, you know, going to see a psychiatrist, I really suggest going to a psychiatrist. I would not suggest going to a family doctor to get mental health meds unless it's an emergency. But if you do get meds, just remember that it's only half the treatment. The other half of the treatment is talk therapy or EMDR or whatever it is that you and your therapist come up with. But taking the pill is only half of the treatment. And people think that, you know, they just take the pill and they're going to be this happiest person and depression's just going to go away. And it's not. It's more or less to alleviate some symptoms, but you need to go to talk therapy in order to make that treatment 100%.
Right. I'm so glad you said that, because people really are under that assumption.
It's crazy.
It's so sad, because at least the way I see it, the medication is usually to stabilize so that they can actually work through all of whatever's going on in their head, because sometimes people can't quite get to that point because of their own probably feelings of self-worth, and they don't really want to admit that all these bad things happen to them.
Yeah, so. I mean, I would assume that it's kind of listen, therapy is super hard. I think therapy, there's been many times where I did not want to go to my therapy sessions because I knew we were going to dive into something super hard that week. Or, you know, I look at therapy like, you know, you tried healing a wound by yourself. And so now you got this kind of scar, and going to therapy sometimes feels like just ripping open the scar again. And it's like, it's necessary because the scar did not heal right. You did not, you know, you're not a therapist. You didn't, you know, you did not heal it completely the right way. So it's sometimes therapy is painful. But sometimes pain is necessary to heal. It's just has to happen. So, you know, sometimes therapy can be super scary, and sometimes I leave therapy and I'm like, I have a new lease on life, and oh my gosh, and this is great. And you know, so it's kind of it's a give and take kind of thing. It's a balance, but it's
Right.
necessary.
Totally necessary. When did you start going back to therapy after you were done with those 6 weeks? How long did it take you?
So then I took the antidepressants until I was 14. Then I stopped taking them. I probably didn't actually get in front of another therapist until 17. I think,
Okay.
yeah, I was like 6. Yeah, I just turned 17, I think, turned 18. And I just moved out on my own with Kate. And yeah, my dad was out then. And I just knew that there were some dynamics that I knew I had to go talk about something to somebody. I
Mhm.
didn't really know if that was therapy or that maybe that was just me talking to my mom about something, but I just knew that it was something that I needed to do. And I'm really glad that I did, because my mom even said something to me when I started going back. I'm going to go to therapy. I told her, I said, Mom, I'm going to go to therapy. And she was like, you're 17. Like, what are you talking about? Like, why are you going to, what 17-year-old needs therapy? And I'm like, I guess me. I don't know. I just feel like it's a last resort thing that I feel like I need to do. And now she completely, you know, she's like, I'm so glad you did that, because it helped
Yeah.
me kind of, you know, at the very end of my, you know, adolescent years or teenage years, whatever. It helped me kind of it helped me project my future a little better, like where I wanted to go, what I wanted to do, who am I as a person, what is my self-worth. I had none, because, you know, the people that were supposed to give it to me didn't give it to me, weren't available. My mom was a single mom, so she really wasn't there. I mean, she was there. She wasn't like a piece of crap, but she just wasn't present. So I was home a
Yeah.
lot by myself, you know, so I was alone with my thoughts all the time. So I feel like after going back to therapy when I was 17, 18 is when it really clicked in my head, like, oh wow, like this is actually really great. Like, oh my
Right.
gosh, like this feels, for the first time, therapy felt really, really good. And I think that's when you know you found the right therapist, when you actually
Mhm.
leave their office and something that they said will ring in your head like a couple days later, and you'll remember what they said. Oh yeah, they told me to kind of try breathing right here. Okay, you know what I mean? Like, so once you actually realize and start taking some of their advice outside of the therapy room, that's when you know you got a good therapist and a good connection. I mean, at least for me.
Yeah. No, that's a good way to look at things. Uh, do you feel probably we're expecting this question, but do you feel that getting pregnant young and then giving the baby up for adoption, do you feel that that took you on kind of a whole different whirlwind of a journey in terms of your mental health?
I think it's actually what started it in a way, because I mean, started it in my kind of older years was because, you know, placing Carly for adoption was super. I didn't really look at it as a traumatic experience, I guess, until I went to therapy, and they said, well, you know,
Mm.
this is very traumatic for you, and I kind of coached myself to constantly be positive about it. Oh, well, it's better
Mhm.
for the baby, and yeah, I'll be sad for a little bit, but I'll be okay because she'll be alive, and I'll get pictures. And you know, I kept trying to spin it, and my therapist was one day was like, well, you need to stop with the buts, because I would always say, yeah, I'm really sad, but you know, she's living this great life, and I'd be, oh, it really hurts, but you know, she got these great parents. And he was just like, stop, like, just please sit with this for a second, that it hurts. And that's when I
Mhm.
just broke down. I was just so, it was like, it was so natural and organic for me to try to spin it into something positive, that I never actually sat with the pain. And that's when
Yeah.
they kind of explained to me that it was a traumatic experience. Even though you were a young 16-year-old kid, you felt unconditional love for this child and watch this child leave. And the reason why we placed Carly for adoption was our parents. I mean, we were not in a stable house. They were using drugs. We were, moving, bouncing all over the place, and we knew it wasn't stable, me and Kate. So that, I think, also brought up my past stuff with my dad. Like, oh, look at you. You ruined my life when I was younger. Now you're ruining my chance to be a dad because so it actually helped me prepare like what I wanted to do for my future, so that way I can get to a point when the next time I have a kid, I will be worthy enough to parent this child and be in a situation where I'm mentally stable enough, financially stable enough, et cetera, to be able to be a dad. So, I mean, if it wasn't for Carly, I have no idea. I'd probably be right where my dad was, maybe in prison. I don't know. But she's what really kind of like pulled the blinders off of me and was like, wow, this is real life. Like, here's an innocent child, like, and you cannot provide for this child because of the lifestyle you're living and where you're at and all these issues. So it kind of propelled it, me at least, to kind of be like, wow, there's some stuff I gotta figure out and change, So in a way, if it wasn't for her, I don't think me and Kate would have ever started our own therapy journeys.
That's kind of a big thing to say, but it definitely is traumatic. I find it very interesting that, you were constantly trying to convince yourself, probably because it was too painful to actually just even wrap your head around.
Right.
So for me, that's like mind blowing.
Well, I didn't really realize that we did that. In therapy, I probably would have always buried it and spun it around to be positive, and everyone would have, patted me in the back. Are you okay on her birthday? I'm fine. It's great. I never would have actually dealt with that pain. So I'm really thankful for that specific therapy session that I had, when that kind of forced us to sit with the pain, which is really difficult to do. And I think people don't understand that, like, we do a lot of crazy things to avoid pain. Like, we do lots of crazy things to avoid feeling hurt and pain. And we can actually do such crazy things to avoid hurt and pain that it actually makes the pain even worse. It's like, you got to sit with it. You got to process it, and you can't bury it. It's super important.
Yeah, no, it's huge. So are you still going to therapy now?
Yeah, actually, I starting in 2 weeks, I'm starting a ketamine therapy program, which was really interesting to me, only because I've done talk therapy for so long. They diagnosed me with bipolar, which is something I don't really talk about a lot, but this is the Mind podcast, so I'm gonna be trying to talk about it. But yeah, so they diagnosed me with bipolar. That was by one psychiatrist, and then I kind of rejected that, I feel like, and was like, I'm going to get a different opinion. I don't know what you're talking about. And then I went to a different place, and they kind of confirmed a little bit what he said, but they said that at their practice, they believe it to be more of a spectrum thing than just this is, they're like, we do think you're bipolar, but we think you're very low on the mood swing table. You're not, at this elevated state all the time, whatever. So they did prescribe me some medication. The first person did, and then they actually asked me, which I thought was great. Would you want? Is this a treatment that you would want to explore or not? And I was like, no, absolutely not, because the treatment pill that they were going to give me was just, I looked it up, and I always want to try natural things before I go and take, a pill or whatever. So yeah, actually, that's when I got introduced to alpha stim, like alpha stim machine, which really helped my meditating stuff. And so yeah, they I don't know why I rejected the bipolar diagnosis thing, but I just felt like I liked my brain, I guess. And I didn't want to take anything that totally changed who I was. I was like, I'd rather deal with the highs and lows, and use different alternatives to try to combat this. Since I was kind of, on the lower end of that disorder kind of thing. So, yeah, I'm really happy with where I'm at as far as therapy goes. I'm exploring a lot of different ways of doing it. which is really exciting for me because if I find something that clicks, like I did with Alpha Stim,
Mhm.
hopefully I can get some knowledge on it and help people who kind of think that there's only one option. You go to a psychiatrist, he gives you a pill, you go home, you take it, hopefully you get better,
Yeah.
and then return. So I'm trying to figure out, my little mental health journey path here
Right.
to healing.
Right. Wow. I wonder. So you said you don't know why you died, or not why you died, why you rejected your diagnosis. Um, I think that's a scary diagnosis that people talk about very, um, I don't want to say they're uneducated, but they simply don't know. They're naive about it. They don't
Yeah,
realize that it is kind of a spectrum thing. When people say, "Oh, you're bipolar," they
right.
give it such a negative connotation,
Hmm.
and it's it's quite sad actually because most people function fairly well usually. Um, but
Well, but like you said, we kind of gave it this linear, like, oh, you're
Mhm.
bipolar. You're when people are, when people even, I've heard my younger niece and nephew say it, and they're like 13. Oh God, you're so bipolar, and it's like, don't say that. It's like,
Right.
because it's actually a really serious thing, and
Yeah.
you're putting a different light on it, which is like you said, it's negative. So when I first got that, I was like, not
Mm-mm.
me, no way, like that's crazy. But later on, just actually a year ago, they diagnosed my sister and my dad with it. They both
Mm.
went down to Texas, and they both live there right now. They both went down there for drug rehab, and they both got diagnosed with it. So it's kind of like when they got diagnosed with it too, I was like, whoa, like, oh my gosh, is this a family thing? Is this like what is this? And my therapist explained that there's not really any proof that it is hereditary or whatever, but they it's pretty common. That down the line you
Yeah.
have it, your kiddo has it, that kind of stuff. But yeah, I mean, as far as how I'm managing it, it's going really well. Of course I have mood swings and you know that kind of stuff, but I kind of try to look at it like, instead of labeling myself, I guess, as having this debilitating disorder, I look at it like, I just have a little more elevated state of emotions when I have mood swings than other people do. And
Yeah.
there's ways to, combat those things and stuff. So, I mean, I'm not saying that not everyone that has bipolar doesn't need medication. I believe that, like you said, the spectrum thing
Oh yeah.
is definitely real. And I feel like if here's my thing, if medication helps you, please do it. Go for it. Great. Like my wife, she takes antidepressants, she takes, gabapentin for her nerves. And there's certain things that she takes where it's like, listen, if it works for you, awesome. I personally just would like to try everything I can before doing that. So
Right. Now, was that because you had a bad experience with taking medication the first time? Did you have side
I think
effects?
so. Yeah, I think that when doing it so young and just the way it made me feel, um, yeah, I think that that first experience kind of freaked me out a little bit, because it did change me so much, and I stopped writing in my book, and I stopped. My imagination was different, so I did feel, even though young age, it just changed my personality. And there's things that
Mhm.
I liked about myself that I didn't want to change. So yeah, that first experience kind of freaked me out a little bit. So
Right. So you're like, I don't want to do that again. But that
yeah, no,
was
I'm like,
really
I don't
young.
want to do that again. I know what's gonna happen.
Right, right. Well, I mean, and you got to figure at 11 years old, you're just coming into the time of like figuring out who you are and what you were meant to do and yada yada. So I definitely feel I can't believe they gave you medication at that age. That still blows my mind.
All my therapists that I said that, their eyes all get big, like, and they all go right down. They're like, okay, you're, you're on,
Makes
okay.
sense.
You prescribe medication at 11. Interesting. Yeah. So apparently, it's not something that they usually do. So, but
Hmm.
like I said, I don't know if that was because of the insurance. I don't know. I don't really know why. I think the mental health, my first mental health experience was not all that great. I think it was due to the just us growing up from poverty. I don't know what if it had if the insurance had anything to do with the government funding or what, but hopefully that can get better for future people, because it's pretty intense for 11-year-old to have to walk past a psych ward to get to their,
Yeah.
it's intense. So yeah.
Did you feel like you were in a scary movie?
Yes, it did. I mean, as a little kid, I watched lots of movies, but I'm 11, so it's like I've seen some things as far as on TV and stuff. And so to see them, yeah, having to walk past them, and they're just, it's scary. They're drooling, they're screaming, they're scratching the staff, and it's just, yeah, it was intense, very, very intense.
Did you feel like by them making you, I don't want to say making you, because it could have been the only facility that they had at that time, the only
Right.
option. By going through that experience, do you feel like that made you feel like you were, I'm just going to say crazier in kid
It
language,
did.
than
Oh
you
yeah,
were?
no, that's what scared me the most, because looking at these people, I'm like, oh my gosh, is this me? Is this where I'm gonna
Right.
be? Is this what I'm supposed to be like? Is this why I did what I just did? In the backyard? Do normal people not try to commit suicide? Like, and I'm just in this category now, and this is who I am. Yeah, I think it definitely just freaked me out, because inside I was like, I don't belong here. That's not me. Like, that's not. I should not be here. And I think that also kind of helped me kind of reject my first therapist a little bit, only because like I wanted to prove to him I'm not crazy. I was like, I'm not.
Right.
So I'm like trying to talk really good. I'm trying to give all the right answers that I can to get out of there, and not really actually feel what I was supposed to feel in there. So yeah, it definitely affected my approach, and to that first therapy experience, for sure.
Right. Yeah, I can only imagine. I mean, even as an adult walking into those scenarios, I've never been or seen quite that experience, but I can only imagine it would still be pretty, at least take you aback a little bit.
Yeah, I remember my mom grabbed my shoulder and kind of switching her, so she's on the middle of the hallway. I could tell
Right.
my mom was like, okay, like I don't even think she wanted to be there at that point. So
Yeah,
yeah,
probably. And she's probably thinking, oh, I didn't expect this.
yeah,
That,
it was pretty intense.
wow. Um, Knowing what you know now, do you feel like as you're watching your kids grow, you have like red flags, or you're more attuned to red flags than you would have been had you experienced all of this?
Oh yeah, for sure. Like I can see it in my daughter Nova. I can see her curiosity for like really wanting to, like, she wants things explained to her in like really crystal clear detail. Or also keep asking. And she just, and I remember being a kid and being told, well, because I said so, or because I told you to do that, and I'm an adult and you're a kid. And I remember being younger, that was a huge source of fuel for my rebellion. Like I had a really big problem with authority. So it was teachers, it was principals, it was anyone that was an adult telling me to do something, because they're older than me. It just didn't make any sense. So I feel like for me now as a dad to Nova, I actually sit down with her, and she can ask why, and I will explain to you until science will not allow me to do any further, and then you just go up to God or wherever you praise, whatever. Like I don't know, but so I believe in engaging with my kids' curiosity, and just explain to them as much as I can, until I can't no more. And then it's funny because eventually if I do that for 10 minutes, she eventually okay, and then she goes in colors and she forgets.
Yeah.
But it definitely helps me also. It helps me with her, for example, a couple of weeks ago, she had a boy in her class, and she was pulling the back of her ponytail. And so I just told her, I said, you're going to have to tell a teacher. And so she did. And the teacher, punished the boy, I think like 3 or 4 times. And I said, well, obviously this 5 minutes on the fence is not working. I was like, so Nova, you're going to have to take this in your own hands, and you're going to have to defend yourself, and make a stand. And your voice is strong and it's very powerful, and you can do a lot with your voice. You don't have to hit, you don't have to scream, but you can do a lot with your presence and how you stand and how you say things. And so yeah, she yelled at the kid and made it very, she very let it known that she was not going to be, her hair was not going to be pulled, and she was not going to stand for it, and he hasn't touched her since. And so yeah, there's little things that, like, where if I was younger, my mom would be like, Tyler, it was very, she was always like, Tyler, keep your mouth shut. Keep your mouth shut. Just don't say anything, because I was a really big smart ass. So I always would just like make teachers super mad. And so she'd always like, keep your mouth shut and don't say anything. Put your head down. Just get to the day. And with Nova, I'm not like that. I'm like, no, let's handle this. In your own little. You're a kid, but they still have their own little social classes that they have to figure it out. And so, yeah. So I definitely think it helped me kind of like focus more intensely on my kid, instead of being like, oh, you're a kid, whatever. Like, no, it's important, because it's forming who they are and their strengths and stuff. And especially I have girls, so it's like I was like, you better tell that boy what's up, stop pulling your hair.
Right.
So,
exactly.
or else dads have to go up there and I'm gonna get in real big trouble.
So, oh my goodness. Yeah, raising kids is a whole different ball game.
Oh my gosh, it's crazy.
It's good that you have that experience, though, because I do think that a lot of people, maybe not so much anymore. I feel like we're maybe a little more educated, just in general. Not like, even if you read tons of parenting books, like, don't just say, because I'm an adult, because it doesn't always work. Usually they're like, so.
Yeah. So exactly. That was my attitude when I was younger, and I used to always challenge it every time I heard it, because I said so. I'm the teacher. Oh, really? Well, yeah, I was horrible. I was really when I was younger, I was a crazy kid, always in trouble.
Right. Well, and that's hard to deal with too. And your mom being a single parent, was she always always a single mom? Okay.
Yeah, she had boyfriends here and there, but none of them ever lasted. We never like moved in with anybody. They just never lasted. I think my mom's a little bit too independent. She was very focused on her job and providing for her kids, and the guy was kind of just like there, and if he wasn't doing anything, then she booted him. So yeah, so
nothing wrong with that.
No, she gave him a couple drawers in her dresser, and that was as far as she went. You ain't moving in, you're not, so she stayed pretty committed, but she also had to work 2 jobs growing up. So she did mortgages in a mortgage office Monday through Friday, and then Friday night and Saturday night she worked as a bartender, just to kind of make ends meet. So she was really like, when I say she wasn't there, she really was not there. I maybe saw my mom growing up probably all together every day, maybe 3 hours, in one whole day, because she would come home on Friday and go right to the bar, and she had like 20 minutes to get ready. So, and most of the time I wasn't home, riding my bike somewhere. So, so I remember being about 5 and pushing chairs up to the counter, getting my PB&J, doing things myself, kind of force myself to be independent a little bit. So,
yeah, it sounds like you raised yourself. You're very,
in a way,
parentified. Yeah.
And I didn't really realize that to go to therapy. And I was like, well, Mom, I remember how, like, I don't know but like, we always try to, 2 parents. One's the bad one is the good one, regardless if they're both have faults. And I was just so used to my dad being, oh, he's the, but I totally ignored a lot of the things that I would glorify my mom. And I remember being in therapy and then saying like, well, she wasn't there, she was absent. And I was like, and I got like offended. I was like, what? She wasn't absent. She just wasn't there. And I remember the therapist being like, okay, let's dive deeper into that, because you seem to really not want to accept the fact that your mom was not there. Her presence was not there when you needed it. And it was just like hard. I remember so many months of just like slowly but surely, like I would stop defending her a little bit, but it was very difficult. When you spent your whole life kind of like demonizing one parent and then edifying another. And then this therapist is telling me that, she's the one that I've been edifying is not all that great. It was kind of a hard pill to swallow. But yeah, it kind of helped me realize that, the reasons why I am the way I am. And I think that's the biggest thing about therapy, right? Like, isn't it to find out why we operate the way we operate? Why do I, do the certain thing I do? Why do I respond with this kind of behavior when this happens? And it's all like a discovery journey, which I think everyone should take. Really.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think whether you think you need therapy or you don't think so, just try it out, because even
It
just a
can't
few
hurt.
sessions, exactly. You're just
Right.
talking to someone. I mean, at the end of the day,
It-
you're just talking to someone, just another human being, and it helps.
yeah,
I
actually
rem
having to talk to my friends to go to therapy is pretty intense because they have that kind of idea of, one of my buddies that says, if I go to therapy, I already failed or I already lost. So what's the point? Like, and I'm just like, that's really interesting to like, so you're just gonna accept defeat, you
Mhm.
know? And he was like, what? I'm like, yeah, you're accepting defeat. He said, well, I've always told that if you need therapy, you're already screwed. And I'm like, wow, that's that's crazy. But yeah, he went through a couple sessions and he said he felt great afterwards. And I was like, see,
Oh,
there you go. That's awesome.
that's so cool. Now, did you ever ask him why he felt like you would lose if you went to therapy?
No, I just said I don't understand, and the only his only explanation to me was like, well, my dad and my mom, I guess his mom and his dad weren't together, and when they tried going to couples therapy, and they said, oh, if you got to go couples therapy, your relationship's already doomed, and it was like, wow, so like that's where the stigma is, right? So, oh, if I have to go
Mhm.
to therapy, I'm already doomed. Oh, if
Right.
I have to go to therapy, I'm already in such a low spot that what's the point of even going and trying to fix it or whatever. And it's
Right.
like, wow, that's crazy, because it should be as simple as like, oh, I hurt my back, I'm gonna go to a chiropractor. Like, it should be that simple. Like, oh, I have I'm gonna go get it fixed. Like, it should not be this thing of like, oh, my back is screwed for the rest of my life, whatever, I'm already laying in bed, I can't, I'm not gonna go try to fix it, there's no point. And it's just crazy
Right.
how it's gotten to that point, where people actually believe that it's not worth it, that they're
Yeah.
already doomed just for seeking out a therapist, which was really interesting because think about like having to search for a therapist, even just to get the ball rolling, you already feel the sense of shame and guilt and you haven't even opened the door yet. Like
Mhm.
that's it should not be like that. It should be
No.
welcomed.
Yeah, I completely agree. I always compare it to like a dentist. Like if you have a tooth
Yeah,
pain,
exactly.
you're going to call the dentist probably as soon as you notice it, because you don't want to
Mhm.
deal with it anymore. And I think your brain and your mental health should be the exact same way. Like, that's not right. Or maybe that doesn't feel right. So, you know what? I should probably give the therapist a call. But people just don't, they don't talk about it. And
And
that's
I also I
the
feel
point.
like, my friend that I'm talking about, his dad was a little rougher. So I think it depends on like, it's really important to kind of break that generational trauma. I really believe in that, being a huge factor in why these people have these concrete ideas of what it's supposed to be like. And it's like, just because, the whole point of each generation is to get a little bit better than the last. Like, isn't the whole point
Mhm.
of evolution, and why, So, how about you not do what they did? Try a
Right.
different route. Might be surprised.
You
Don't
might
listen to your
be.
grandpa and your dad and your grandpa. I'm pretty sure they're really great guys. I'm just saying, try to do something different and see what happens, and you'd be surprised.
Right. Totally and completely. Um, I remember watching the show, and you were saying that you wanted to go to school and do something in the mental health profession. Um,
Yeah.
whatever happened to that?
Well, I went to 2 years of college, and I was again I got in a little I wouldn't say argument, I'll say debate with my political science teacher. And at this point in college, I was not getting any no financial help, whatever. So not that it has anything to do with it, but here's my brain process when I'm sitting there arguing with this teacher. It was, wow, I'm sitting here paying all this money to sit here and argue with this teacher about something that's so clear, and I'm wasting my time doing all these different classes that didn't really add up. And I ended up just not, the last semester I remember going, I just, no effort. I didn't put any effort in. I was annoyed. I felt like I was forced to do this. And I felt like I went to college because society said that's what I was supposed to want to do. And I
Mm,
felt like it was like, okay, all right, I'm gonna do what they tell me that I probably should want to do. But it really wasn't something I wanted to do. And so I just the second year, just I was like, you know what? I'm gonna have to cut my losses here. I do believe that college opens up a lot of opportunities. I also don't want people to think that it's the only route.
Yeah.
And that if you don't take that route, you're going to fail. And that if you don't take that route, you're not going to be as worthy as someone who did. Because, everyone's got their own, like, own different path of doing things. And they know their way, I think, a little better than some political science teacher, for instance, that I got in an argument with. So, like, yeah, I did 2.5 years, and I just decided not to spend any more money to get ease. And
Oh,
yeah, obviously I wish I would have completed, but at the same time, dwelling about that, it's always there, right? I mean, I'm
hmm
29. It's not like I could never go back if it really was something that I was like, oh my gosh, I got to do this. So, well, I guess we'll see in the future what happens with that. But yeah, I made it 2 years, which was longer, I guess, than I expected to make, given my school history.
right, right. Oh man. Well, that's so good. And obviously, you still have the desire to help people who are struggling just by being willing to have this conversation openly and honestly. I think it helps more than anybody realizes.
Yeah, well, and that's an interesting thing to bring up, because as far as filming goes, like, yeah, it's really tiresome, and it gets, being in the public eye is very stressful and all this stuff. But if it wasn't for MTV, kind of not forcing me and Kate to do this, but like, if it wasn't for MTV giving us the stage, I guess, to
Mhm.
process everything, and if it didn't give us the stage to really tell our testimony over and over again, I don't think we'd be as far healed in that journey as we are now. So I actually really think MTV was a huge blessing, when it came to my own mental health, because it it felt like they kind of helped usher me into expressing my testimony and talking about it more than I really would have naturally. And it kind of, the more you talk about it, the more it makes sense, the more you start kind of connecting things, and making it make sense. And so, it actually helped me and Kate out a lot. I feel like being filmed and having to talk about really serious conversations and be super, super vulnerable, to the world, because let's face it, there's a lot of haters out there, so
Oh yeah.
it's part of the process. But my whole thing is that I feel like I've been given a really rare opportunity, and what a disservice it would be for me not to be vulnerable and
Mhm.
express, my mental health journey, and Kate's mental health journey, which I believe she went way off the deep end. As far as, I'd never actually seen anything on TV that was as, kind of right in the midst of her mental health
Mhm.
crisis, of her going to treatment a couple of times. I mean, she really, I was like, I told her after treatment, I said, I think you're maybe one of the strongest females I've ever seen on camera on a reality show that's really, um super vulnerable and honest, and showing people, that this is what pain looks like, but this is
Yeah.
also what healing looks like too. So it's
Yeah.
huge, and I feel like I have a moral responsibility with this platform to do conversations like this, and talk about my own mental health stuff, and not, especially with men. I mean, men have this thing where we're
Mhm.
boys, don't cry, don't show weakness, don't be sad, don't do all these things. And I'm really hoping to try to just switch that, over, because boys cry too, and
Oh
and
yeah.
and boys get sad, and boys get depressed, and boys are insecure. So it's important just all around, I feel like, to talk about these kind of things, since MTV's kind of in our lives. I feel like I said, we have a moral responsibility to share these things, and not, I mean, how much easier would it be if I could just hide from the cameras and be like, oh, we're
Oh
not
yeah.
talking about no hard stuff today, we're talking about our fluffy dog and our
Yeah.
happy day at the zoo every
Yeah.
day, and that's just not life. So,
No,
I think it's important to be vulnerable on a show like this.
it definitely is. I think you guys have probably, and like you said, Kate, um, probably helped so many people, just talking about the miscarriage and like people struggle with that all the time. And I feel like until recently, not a lot of people have spoke out about it and spoke out about like,
Right.
hey, yeah, it's hard, but it's really, really common, unfortunately. And, sometimes it can send you into a downward spiral and
Yeah, it's
hard.
important you bring up the miscarriage part because before that kind of stuff happened, you wouldn't really hear a lot about it. And I have noticed an increase in kind of advocacy for girls who have experienced this. And I think it comes down to like what I've noticed is, I mean, me and Kate get flooded with messages all the time about, thank you so much for sharing
Mm,
this, or this scene really hit me, or what you said to your dad really struck me in this way, or whatever. And a lot of it, as far as the female perspective goes, when they're writing about, relating to a miscarriage, um, I feel like I don't know if it's a society thing where we kind of went wrong by trying to desensitize girls when they experience this miscarriage, because not a lot of the responses, I know they're well, like the intentions are good, but when you
yeah,
tell someone, a woman who had a miscarriage, oh, I know, but you can have another, or oh, I know that's really sad, but at least you can have kids, and that's a possibility about. But it's like, so I feel like we're kind of patting on the back instead of,
hmm,
we're not really hugging, when we should
yeah,
just don't really tell them that. I know you're trying to make us feel better, but saying that, oh, well, at least you can have another one, does not take away or minimize the pain that you had
right,
with this other one. So I feel like maybe a lot of the reason why we don't hear about it is because women felt shame, some kind of shame and guilt. Maybe it was their fault, and inside they felt like, oh, if I wouldn't have, jogged that morning, or there's all these crazy things
yeah,
that I get sent to me that I'm reading, and I'm just like, wow, like there's like this shame and guilt thing attached to women, that their bodies aren't good enough, or they did something wrong, and they're the reason why something didn't happen, and so they don't really talk about it. And it's like, no, I think it's super super important, because it is really common, and you wouldn't think it's that common because people don't talk about it, but the
hmm,
more we talk about it, the more we understand what it's like, and also the better we can help these women and support them in the right way without saying,
right,
specific things. So I think it's important that, we talk about it, and be vulnerable with that kind of that situation. So
right. So, as a man, if there's any other men listening when this goes out, how would you recommend that if their wives or girlfriend or, hey, even sister are going through that, how would you recommend that they support that loved one?
well, I would first say to let their significant other know that it was not their fault. I mean, I don't know. I think that's one of the most biggest things that, like, when Kate's experienced her miscarriages, I've held her. I just said, it's not your fault. And I feel like that was the one thing that I said that really allowed her to just break down, cry, really, like it just, so it was like just reiterating that's not your fault. Um, and honestly, I found, at least for my personal experience with Kate, I can't really say anything to make her
Mhm.
feel better. But my whole thing is just hold them. I mean, I don't know what else to do with Kate that I see a positive response from, is just to hold her, and just let her cry, and just tell her that I know it's really sad. I know it's really, really sad. This is
Yeah.
not, and also like giving them the freedom that you have the freedom to be sad, because I feel like the statements that I was mentioning before about, it's okay, you can have another one, it just like robs them of the opportunity and the freedom to feel sad. Like, no, I know I can
Mhm.
have another kid. I know that it's not my fault, but please, I just want to, it's like, so I guess just being like, I know it's really sad, you do not deserve
Yeah.
this, hold them, let them cry, um and just let
Let
them know
them
that you're going to be
mourn.
there for them. I mean, that's really it.
Yeah. Yeah. Let them grieve because that's the only way you get
Yeah,
over any sort of death, quite frankly, is
right.
you have to go through that grievance process. And that's not enjoyable for anybody.
Yeah. Well, it's almost like I tried comparing. I was explaining to someone else earlier, and I tried explaining it to, like, in a way of like, oh, it's like if your brother died, and you had a sister, and they say, oh, well, at least you have a sister. You still have another brother. It's like, nah, it doesn't work. It's like it's still a
No.
death. It's still
Hmm.
really sad, and we need the freedom to grieve. It's important.
Hmm. Right. Right. That's a whole other conversation because we don't allow people to do that either.
Yeah, right.
Oh, it's so sad. So I'm going to ask my favorite question, and I ask this to everybody. What do you do for self-care?
For me, so for self-care, hang on one second. Let me turn this down. It's my kid's baby monitor.
Dad's life.
Yeah, so for me, so I use this machine called AlphaStim. I don't know if you've heard of this.
I think so. It sounds
Okay, so
familiar.
AlphaStim, yeah, AlphaStim is it's an electro machine that you clip to your ears.
Mhm.
And you can kind of mess with your levels to see what works for you. But that helps me a lot, puts me in a really easily like a meditative state. And obviously I go to therapy, love my therapist. So I do a lot of meditating with the AlphaStim machine, and also reading and writing. I write a lot. If it wasn't for writing, I don't even think I would be here. But writing, I've been doing it since I was a kid. So it's just helped me, it helps me categorize, my
Right.
thoughts. I'm a pretty hyper person naturally. So it helps me just kind of helps me, do something with my hand, and it helps me just kind of categorize my thoughts a little better. And I have a, when I write, I purposely write whatever I write, and then I close and I don't read it until like a long time. And then I'll come back and I'll read it. And for some reason, it always ends up being like, I'll read something that like, oh, I wrote this back then, so I can literally read it today because I'm feeling a certain way today. And it just, I don't know, it just helps me a lot. And I also think positive affirmations in the morning helps a lot. Just reading something, it could be so small, a quote, anything. And also earlier on, I don't do this as much anymore, but earlier on I would put post-it notes wherever you're going to be in the morning. So like on your mirror, you're going to brush your teeth in the morning. Hopefully you do. But if you do, a post-it note, and it could be as simple as you're awesome. You have really nice green eyes. Just something really like something positive that you really believe about yourself. And I feel like it helps you just kind of get in the right state of mind or whatever in the morning. So
yeah, it helps you recognize that you're human too, and you have
yeah.
good qualities along with all the bad ones that you talk to yourself about all day long.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah. So is there any sort of advertising that you would like to do for yourself in terms of what are you working on, other than, I know you said that Teen Mom premieres tomorrow, which is the 21st, but it won't go out until later anyways.
Yeah, right.
Um,
I guess not really. I mean, my clothing line for the kids is kind of on a standstill from COVID and stuff like that. So hopefully that'll be up and running back again soon. But as far as I'm living a pretty boring COVID life right now in quarantine.
That's okay.
Yeah, we're filming the next season right now. So yeah, we're we're just plugging along over here.
Yeah, that's okay. I mean,
Yeah.
While your kids are young, that's probably the best thing you can do is to have a simple life because they're only little ones and you might as well enjoy it.
It's true. I'm actually, me and Kate, we always talk about how blessed we feel, the fact that we've been able to be home with our kids. So it's great. I love it. I wouldn't trade it for anything. And like I said, I'm going to get older one day, and I can always look back and say, I had those really precious years with those kids that you can never get back. So it's great.
Right. And you can always go back to college, get a job,
Yeah.
do this, that, or the other, whatever your dreams are. But
Yeah.
you can never get your kids' childhood back.
Right.
So that's
So true.
really important. Well, in like a year, I always like to ask people if they would like to come back on, do an update, kind of see what's going on. So would you be willing to do that?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Awesome.
Oh yeah.
Awesome.
I love what you're doing with the Mind podcast. It's awesome. That's the only reason why I agreed to do it. Because I was like, I get a lot of requests to do podcasts, but usually they're,
sure.
About drama or, whatever, entertainment stuff. So when I saw yours come over, I was like, finally, yes, something about mental health and something that is actually like beneficial to society instead of entertainment news. Yeah.
Yes. That's my goal, is because I see so many people, especially during COVID, they just completely disengaged. Just,
Yeah.
you know, like they just disappeared, and you're like, you were doing so good. So I'm like, we need to do something about this. We need to get the word out that, hey, if you need help, just reach out for help. And no matter what your platform is or what you do, they still struggle too.
Yeah. It's important. It's a good thing that you're doing. So keep doing it.
Thank you. We are definitely trying.
Good.
Well, thank you so much. I definitely appreciated all of it, and I had a really good time today.
Oh no, thank you. I can't wait to come back and do it again.
Well, thank you so much, and you and your family have a wonderful evening.
Oh,
We're
you
halfway
too.
through the
Thank
week.
you. Yeah,
Thank
you
you.
too. Have a good one.
Bye. Bye. You
Bye.
too. Please go show Tyler some love and support. All his links are listed. And check out our Instagram for more information and guests. Thanks for tuning in.